YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. Davos 2026 at the World Economic Forum did not leave anything to the imagination when it comes to the building of the New World Order. There are a lot of deceptions going on, including, of course, how Donald Trump has now taken over the World Economic Forum, and Elon Musk is now in attendance at the World Economic Forum. And of course, this has blurred the vision of conservatives in America about what the World Economic Forum actually stands for. Make no mistake about it. The United Nations and the World Economic Forum are the backbone of the New World Order. In fact, they are the New World Order. I'm going to get into the agendas that were discussed, and we're going to start by talking about the deceptions that are taking place, which again has been the theme in Davos for the last couple of years. Rebuilding trust in the future. I've said it once, I'll say it a million more times. They did not expect the pushback that they got from COVID-19 and the vaccines. They had to make a huge pivot. Do not forget who the father of the vaccine actually is. The man who declared himself the father of the vaccine many times over, Donald Trump. And now, of course, we're seeing a pivot away from vaccines. We're seeing a pivot away from the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and the WHO. And this is all being done by design because they're doing everything they can to build back trust. And now they're doing it to conservatives. It started with the theme of rebuilding trust in the future. And of course, what happened from there is that they had to remove people like Klaus Schwab from being the face of the World Economic Forum because they didn't expect Klaus Schwab to become a household name. They didn't expect all the memes of Klaus Schwab being Dr. Evil or one of the most wicked people alive. So, of course, they've pivoted. And who did they pivot to? Well, after they had Klaus Schwab step down, they pivoted possibly to the only person I could think of who's actually worse than Klaus Schwab, and that's Larry Fink of BlackRock. And, of course, Larry Fink opened up the meeting, as you can see here, doing the triangle of power with his hands, talking about how important it is for all of these global elites to build back trust.
We believe that outside the United Nations, this is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. For many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the elites. And how does that play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust? And there's some truth to the critique. I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next. If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust.
And of course, it continues to be the theme even in 2026, building back trust. Well, who are they going to build back trust with? Well, they're going to use a lot of deceptions, including Donald Trump, because they're openly talking about Donald Trump being a threat to the world order. And what they're doing with Trump is they're having him and RFK and all these guys talk about things that we would all talk about, because more and more people have woken up to geoengineering and chemtrails, and even Donald Trump made mention of this at the World Economic Forum. This is a building back trust mechanism that he is using. He's pivoted away. He hasn't mentioned vaccines anymore, even though for a couple of years after COVID, he still was talking about his greatest creation being the COVID vaccine, which we know killed many, many people, millions of people who got permanent neurological damage, heart problems from the vaccine. Well, here's Trump casually mentioning chemtrails at the World Economic Forum. And again, this is a deception to build back trust.
Wars are the worst of all. Wars are worse than anything. But we can stop wars because that's sort of up to us. But things like dust flying in the air, wherever COVID comes from. But things like dust flying in the air, wherever COVID comes from.
So when people see that, they're saying to themselves, well, Donald Trump is exposing chemtrails. But the reality of the matter is RFK has already come out and talked about DARPA spraying chemtrails. So why wouldn't the president of the United States ban chemtrails? We've heard states like Florida banning chemtrails, which is a lie because people continue to report on chemtrails in Florida and Tennessee because they haven't banned anything. And if Donald Trump wanted to ban chemtrails or he wanted to prevent people from getting sick, he would tear down all those 5G towers as well. But we know that that's never happening. In fact, as I've covered this year, Donald Trump is moving as fast as he can into bringing in 6G technology. So that's a building back trust mechanism, bringing up something like chemtrails, because it would make people like us go, oh, he mentioned chemtrails, but he doesn't do anything about it, just like RFK doesn't do anything about it. Then he announces that the U.S. is leaving the World Health Organization, another build back trust mechanism. And then on top of all of that, he announces the Board of Peace. Trump at Davos marks the start of a new era in world affairs. It's almost as if they are pivoting from calling the New World Order the New World Order, and they're rebranding it as the Board of Peace. Here's Donald Trump and the Board of Peace being announced in Davos.
Congratulations, President Trump. The charter is now in full force, and the Board of Peace is now an official international organization.
So again, the first thing most of us think of is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. And what is this Board of Peace exactly? Well, it's an international organization, which again means it's a global organization that still is going to rely and use the United Nations, but they're pretending like, hey, we've come to Davos, me and Larry Fink and Elon Musk, and we're building out something new, the Board of Peace. And what they're really intending on doing is managing the reconstruction of Gaza, because Gaza is going to be the first smart city that we see built in the world. They're talking about 180 skyscrapers for Gaza. But what it really is, as I've covered many times, is the greater Israel expansion. They haven't been hiding that Gaza is going to be brought into the greater Israel. It's been a plan of the globalists for a long time. Netanyahu hasn't hidden this, showing maps of the new Middle East, which is taken over by Israel and the Great Expansion. And the U.S. is pitching what's called Project Sunrise, which is a plan to turn Gaza into a high-tech metropolis. They don't want to put the word smart city, so they're calling it a high-tech metropolis. They're going to make it bigger and better than it was and better for everyone. So they've destroyed Gaza to bring it in to the greater Israel and to build out this massive mega smart city. But again, the theme of all of this is how the Board of Peace is sidelining the struggling UN, because the Board of Peace is going to be the new face of the New World Order. Because as we've seen from MAGA conservatives, they're completely brainwashed. They think Donald Trump is stopping the New World Order, and it's being done by design. It's being done as part of this script. If you haven't heard the conflict with Canada and America, right? Carney was at the World Economic Forum talking about how the old world order is not coming back. Donald Trump even tweeting out, please let this letter serve to represent that the Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you regarding Canada's joining what will be the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time. Thank you for your attention to this matter. They are doing this deliberately. Here is Carney this week, multiple times, referencing a new world order where Canada is going to align themselves with China and other allies, setting up conflict between the U.S. and China and the U.S. and Canada. But it's all part of the show, because the more they mention the New World Order and Trump being against the New World Order, the more these brainwashed sheeple will think that Trump is actually disabling the New World Order, because they can't think further than they can spit. They can't realize that the Board of Peace is actually just a rebranding of the international order. But here's Carney talking about it.
Mine is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. Yesterday when you met with Premier Lee, one of the things you said in the public remarks was this partnership, Canada and China, this new partnership sets us up well for the new world order. What did you mean by that? What is the new world order?
Well, it's a great question, Brian, because I think the world is still determining what that order is going to be. And let's be clear what we're talking about first and foremost, which is what is going to govern global trade? What is the role of the WTO going to be? How important are bilateral deals such as the one we're developing, plurilateral deals, if I can use that term, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the potential linkages between Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU? Where is financial regulation, payment system regulation going to fit into that? All of these aspects, I mean, use fancy words like the architecture, the multilateral system that has been developing these is being eroded, to use a polite term, undercut, use another term. So the question is, what gets built in that place? How much of a patchwork is it? How much is it just on a bilateral basis? Or where do like-minded countries in certain areas? So like-minded countries, just to be clear, doesn't mean you agree on everything. Aspects, for example, on digital trade or agricultural trade, climate finance as another area, to move into areas of geostrategy, geosecurity. You will have different coalitions that are formed. So what this partnership does is in areas, for example, of clean energy, conventional energy, agriculture, as we were just talking about, and financial services, which we've talked less about, but the evolution of the global financial system, the role of the renminbi over time, the evolution of cross-border payments. I know it all sounds very dry, except for your organization, which I think takes an interest in it. These are important elements of how the system is going to work. And look, the expectation is that rather than these being developed necessarily through the IMF, WTO, and other multilateral organizations, it is going to be coalitions that develop them, not for the world, but for subsectors of the world.
So again, you can even see him doing the triangle of power during his actual speech. And again, they're aligning themselves with China and, of course, trying to pretend like they're not going to willingly give Canada to the U.S. and Greenland to the U.S. But this is being done by design because they're all in on this. And they're going to willingly give Canada to America because that's what the blueprint of the 10-nation plan actually shows us. In fact, it's the exact blueprint of what the technocrat looks like. And speaking of the technocrat, let's start with Elon Musk and how Elon Musk is now suddenly attending the World Economic Forum after many years of saying he would never show up there. Meanwhile, there's photos of him with Klaus Schwab over the years that they've tried to scrub off of the internet, which most of us have saved. He pretends he's not one of these globalists. He's just one of the guys, right? Well, here he is even talking and laughing about this board of peace, because he's saying, is it a board of peace, as in peace and safety, or is it a board of PEICE, and America conquering Greenland and Venezuela?
That was not a large applause. Start again. That's better. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna make this interesting.
How many quotes are you going to want that are going to be after this session?
I don't know. I mean, 5.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everybody here. It's been an amazing week here in Davos. Hopefully everybody saw that we are having conversations here. Hopefully everybody agrees. There are some conversations that we may disagree. There's many conversations that we may have agreed, but through those conversations, and I think today's result with a peace agreement earlier today, the World Economic Forum is here to have those conversations, to have understandings, and also resolution. So it's an important component of who we and what we are, and I'm thrilled to have Elon Musk here. He came all the way from California to be here to see all of you. So thank you, Elon.
You're most welcome. I heard about the formation of the Peace Summit, and I was like, is that PIEC? A little piece of Greenland, a little piece of Venezuela. A little piece of Greenland, a little piece of Venezuela.
Well, how convenient if you look at the Technate of America map, that not only do you see Canada, Greenland, and Mexico merged, but you also notice that Venezuela is actually on that map as well. And Elon Musk's grandfather, one of the pioneers of the technocracy movement, which we're going to see. It's communism through technology. It's a total control system. And speaking of Elon Musk, another thing mentioned by Musk that needs to be noted is he went on a rant about aliens, but he was also mentioning the collective consciousness, without technically saying collective consciousness, but he's talking about consciousness. And he's talking about how they have all these satellites in space and they've never seen a UFO. And again, I've mentioned this a couple of times recently, how they're shifting away from telling us that UFOs actually exist to talking about interdimensional beings, which is really a fancy term for talking about demonic possession. And here he is talking about he'd be the first one to know about aliens. He, in fact, is an alien, which nobody out there actually denies. But remember, as Aleister Crowley once said, today we call them angels and demons. Tomorrow they will call them something else, which is, of course, referencing aliens. And here he is talking about it.
I'm often asked, are there aliens among us? And I'll say that I am one, but...
Or you're from the future.
They don't believe me.
Okay.
But I think if anyone would know if there are aliens among us, it would be me. We have 9,000 satellites up there, and not once have we had to maneuver around an alien spaceship. So I'm like, I don't know. Bottom line is, I think we need to assume that life and consciousness is extremely rare, and it might only be us. And if that's the case, then we need to do everything possible to ensure that the light of consciousness is not extinguished.
So clearly he's hinting at interdimensional beings. And we've heard this from Congress over the last couple of years. We've heard it from professors at Harvard and other universities talking about interdimensional travel, how aliens exist, but they're not aliens up in spaceships. They're really interdimensional beings, which, again, is a fancy term for demons. And what is Elon Musk's plan? What is the plan from the beginning actually been with Project Mars, right? Project Mars, a book written by the founder of NASA. Think about that. The founder of NASA, Werner von Braun, writes about a futuristic people who would colonize Mars and who would be led by someone called the Elon. Well, what a coincidence that he's trying to get this technology underneath everybody's skin. And speaking of which, getting underneath everybody's skin, Larry Fink openly was talking about the need for tokenization and blockchain and a digital currency, which many of us believe is the mark of the beast. Remember, they were talking openly about how there was a plan to put Bitcoin in mice in their DNA with a genetically engineered virus. And you can ask basic AI about devices linked to blockchain and how they've already been placed under the skin. That's what the plan is to get the technology underneath the skin. And all of this stuff, your digital ID, your personal, data will actually be stored in your skin. But they've also told us at the same time, guys like Yuval Harari, that human beings are hackable animals. So here he is talking about how we need to move towards digital currency.
I think the movement towards tokenization, decimalization is necessary. It's ironic that we see two emerging countries leading the world in decimalization, in the tokenization and digitization of their currency. That's Brazil and India. I think we need to move very rapidly to doing that. We would be reducing fees. We would do more democratization by reducing more fees if we had all investments on a tokenized platform that you could move from a tokenized money market fund to equities and bonds and back and forth. We have one common blockchain. We will, we could reduce corruption. So I would argue that yes, we have more dependencies on maybe one blockchain, which we could all talk about. But that being said, the activities are probably processed and more secure than ever.
And again, from there, if that wasn't enough for you, connect the dots with blockchain being underneath your skin, all of us being hooked up to the Internet of Bodies, and then you move into the data centers, because of course the data centers were discussed, and how we're going to have an energy crisis. Because remember, all these data centers need all of our resources so that they can work, and God forbid they get shut off or turned off. Larry lets us know they can't be shut off. They have to be running 24/7, and none of the sheeple out there say why. What's in these data centers? Well, it's all your personal everything. Everything you've ever done online is going to be stored in these data centers. And when they get underneath your skin, all of your data underneath your skin is going to be stored in these data centers, including things like your DNA. But here he is talking about how we're going to need more power to run these things.
The world is going to be short power. Short power. And to power these data companies, you cannot have just this intermittent power like wind and solar. You need dispatchable power because you can't turn off and on these data centers.
And again, everybody should be on board with being anti-data center. Republican, Democrat, everybody should be. But nobody's even asking the question of what's in it. The only pushback we've heard about is how they're going to drain our energy and drain our resources and how it's going to cost us more money, right? Those are a lot of the stories that have come out in local affiliate markets, right? Kansas, some of these places where the data centers are already being built. The people complaining because their energy bill has gone up. It's doubled, right? So Trump comes out because they don't want you to think about what these things are even for. And he says, look, we're going to make big tech foot the bill. They're going to pay for all of it. Don't worry anymore. You won't be paying for the energy because you noticed your bills going up and you complained. So we'll just pivot. But it's really going to come out of your tax money, and we're not going to tell you because, of course, it's going to come out of our tax money. We're going to foot the bill on these data centers without them telling us that we're paying for it. So it won't come out of your energy bill directly, but it'll come out of your taxes. And you'll never know because nobody is ever told where our tax money goes. The government doesn't get audited with our tax money, and they don't tell us what it does, except, of course, when they try to play you like they did earlier in the year because they're trying to build out AI governance, which is a creation of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. And they want you to think your tax money is getting spent on Sesame Street in third world countries so that you say, we need more accountability, we need AI now to tell us where our tax money is actually going. But they'll never be honest with you. They won't tell you that it builds underground tunnels, how all these countries have undertown worlds underneath us that our tax money has actually funded, which of course has enhanced their ability to traffic children because they don't have to do it out in public anymore. These kids that just disappear that can't be found. Well, where do you think they are? They're underground because there's a camera on every street corner. You couldn't go missing if you actually wanted it to go missing. So they're talking about the need for data centers without ever explaining to you what data is going in there. And you could tell that these people that we live among are so distracted with fake news stories about women getting shot by ICE agents every single day, 5-year-olds getting taken by ICE agents, that they don't have to be held accountable and tell us what is the data center for. Because if you knew all your personal, private conversations, your text messages, and all that stuff was going to be stored in there with your digital twin, you would be against it. And then if you found out, well, they really want to get under our skin, so they're going to track everything that's going on in your body too, because these people are obsessed with data, but the data they're obsessed with is you and knowing everything about you, and then of course blackmailing you and using it against you in the future. So they talk about digital currency once again. They talk about, we have Elon Musk talking about really being an alien. Well, if anyone was an alien, it would be me. Well, we know you're demonically possessed. I mean, we know that, you're creating Neuralinks for people, even though DARPA is really creating it. And we're supposed to believe that you don't have this technology in your body. Of course you do. And you could see by his behavior and how he speaks. I mean, he looks like somebody that's tarded. That's how he talks. But we're supposed to believe he's the richest man in the world, right? That's them just rubbing it in your face, because this technology wasn't created by Musk. It was created by DARPA. And as I've said trillions of times, the only way they were going to get you on board with this technology, getting it into your life, these smartphones, etc., was by selling it to you. You willingly thinking you're purchasing these things because it's for the betterment of you and everybody else has one. But if the government showed up at your front door in the year 2000 with a smartphone, you would shut the door in their face. So they marketed to you with brainwashing and commercials, Apple commercials. Then they give you the illusion of choice. Oh, you can get a Samsung. You can get this one. Which one do you prefer? Right? All government spying devices that people are bringing into their actual homes. But really the big theme is that you could see how they're pivoting with Donald Trump as if he is going to be against the New World Order, right? So all the things he mentions about, they're spraying us in the sky. Well, do something about it, Donald. Do something about it. Mention what the dangers of 5G are and how those towers just went up during COVID and how websites like YouTube gave you strikes if you mentioned, I did dozens of videos showing when I got strikes, they would make you take a 10-question quiz to get rid of the strike. And one of the things they put in there is, do you believe that the 5G towers are really causing COVID or causing people to be sick? And if you answered yes, you fail the test, right? Because they're hell-bent on people not realizing what these towers actually do. But this positioning with Canada and aligning with China and potentially other countries out there to form alliances where America's going to have to pretend, hey, we're going to get Greenland and we're going to go get Canada, is just part of their game, because it'll make MAGA conservatives, who we've already seen, they're on board with taking Greenland. They're like, yeah, let's go get Greenland. Like, huh? Why would you care about Greenland? Oh, they have resources. They don't even know what that means. This is part of the plan. This is the technocracy being built out in front of our eyes. We're witnessing it. But all they have to hear is, Canada's anti-Trump and anti-America, so they'll be on board with it. So they'll say, let's go to war with Canada so we can conquer Canada, so we can build out the New World Order, but it won't be called the New World Order anymore. It'll have this new name that Donald Trump created, which is extremely gay, by the way, the Board of Peace, where they're focusing on it's an international organization. What do you think the World Economic Forum is? What do you think the United Nations is? What do you think NATO is? These are international organizations, but all these sheeple do is cheer every move that he makes. They don't realize that they're being played. So that was really the theme that we saw at the World Economic Forum. Building back trust. So they put Donald Trump there. They put Elon Musk there. And all of a sudden conservatives are like, oh yeah, well, Klaus Schwab is gone. Maybe it's a new era at the World Economic Forum. Maybe it's a conservative movement taking place, because now all these people who would boo Elon Musk are cheering for him, because it's all part of the psychological game, the psychological experiment that we live in. So really what they were doing was building back trust while telling you that, Canada's talking about a new world order with China, but Trump's talking about a board of peace, which again is going to build out a smart metropolis in Gaza, which Netanyahu, of course, is on board with, because it's really in disguise the greater Israel expansion. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.